Iska was a pathetic and incompetent saint disciple who could control his degenerate urges and decided to free a witch from prison. The silly girl who was suffering from brain rot chose to ask stupid questions instead of enjoying her freedom. Later on, Iska met Alice, whose huge melons kept him distracted from completing his mission. Since both of them wanted to end the war that raged on between their empires, they fell in love and hoped to clap each other before saving their nations. A year after Iska's stupid prison break, he was freed from jail and told to hunt down Alice, who was known as the Ice Calamity Witch. Alice was a purebred and the direct descendant of the Grand Witch, Nebulis. In order to fulfill his mission, Iska needed 3 of his companions. Nene, a childish girl who loved to dangle her melons in Iska's face and probably wanted to have his kids as well. Jin, a sharp-mouthed guy who seemed uninterested in the boring events of the world. And Mismis, another clumsy girl who was slow because of her heavy melons, but she was also their captain. With the group finally reuniting, they headed off to take down their target. Mismis felt that Iska drew the short end of the straw when she found out that they would be hunting Alice. According to her, Alice was also known as the most powerful astral mage in history. Regardless of his unfortunate circumstances, all Iska wanted to do was put an end to the war. They headed to a territory where the Empire was defending a power plant from the astral mages of the Nebulis sovereignty. While driving through the territory, they were ambushed by mage attacks. Then they got a backup request from the Nelka Force communications teams, but they were held down by the enemy. While Iska used his sword to fend off the attacks from the mages, Jin whipped out a Glock that looked like it belonged in the Warframe game. Before they knew it, they were surrounded by a lot of astral mages. Jin and Iska quickly took care of the enemies while Neen and Mismis played the roles of useless damsels in distress. Then, a girl with melons comparable to that of a flat-screen TV and who was also Alice's maid, Rin, popped up with an earth golem to attack them. Iska decided to face Rin, while the rest of his companions ran off. When he got Rin cornered, she tried to distract him by tearing off her apron. Iska countered her move and found himself in a position that would let her have a taste of his sausage. Alice then showed up to save her incompetent maid. In the blink of an eye, she froze the entire forest. By the time Iska realized, her ice had gone as far as the power plant, and she shattered it. Their battle began with Alice launching a barrage of ice attacks. Iska tried to defend himself, but he was slowly getting sliced up like a Thanksgiving turkey. Alice got distracted by Iska's words when he said that he wanted to stop the war. While also letting him know that she wanted to unite the world, she tripped from the platform she was on. Iska caught her, and she couldn't help but stare at him like a lost puppy. Feeling embarrassed, Alice left with a huge bird that she summoned. Nini and the rest got back as the witch left. Meanwhile, Alice couldn't get Iska's words out of her head, so she decided to attend an opera. While crying like a hopeless wimp, she was handed a handkerchief by a man who turned out to be Iska. After the battle earlier, Mismis went to see Iska, since she didn't have any other reasonable use as the captain of their squad. To cheer him up, she invited him to her room, which was filled with stuffed animals and her undergarments that she didn't hesitate to display. Iska was shocked at the sheer size of what covered Mismis's melons and other sensitive areas. She then gave him a ticket to the opera, which she also had a creepy obsession with. Since Iska was too useless to get a driver's license, Nene drove him to the venue, where he accidentally got a seat next to Alice. She immediately accused him of following her around and attempted to attack him, but Rin stopped her stupid master. Alice felt embarrassed by her actions, so she apologized and left. She left for a restaurant where she was told that she had to share a table with someone. Coincidentally, it was Iska, and it started to look like he couldn't keep himself away from her melons. Alice choked on her water as she saw him, but it was only a matter of time before she choked on Iska's you-know-what. It also didn't help that the two of them ordered the same kind of food. As they ate, Iska told her how he loved pasta, especially the ones with white creamy sauce. Alice started conversing like they were friends, so Rin had to call her back to her senses. Later that night, Alice and Iska had trouble sleeping in their respective beds as they couldn't get each other out of their minds. Iska then had a dream where he fought a bunch of ugly-looking lizard men, and a young girl who's presumed to be Alice helped him with her ice powers. The next morning, Iska and his companions were doing a morning drill. Miss was far behind because her huge melons were slowing her down. During their training, they met Rissia, who was the Special Defense for Humankind HQ's special counsel. She then gave Iska a ticket to an art exhibition in the neutral city of Ain. Meanwhile, Alice went to meet her mother, Queen Nebulis, who told her that the seal on their founder was weakening, and it probably had something to do with Iska. Queen Nebulis refrained her daughter from going to the battlefield until they were able to find out more about Iska. Later in the day, Alice and Iska ran into each other at the art exhibition. Alice didn't want to be in the same vicinity as him, so she wandered off into an alley and got lost. When she found her way back, Iska was still there like a desperate, creepy lover. Iska offered to guide her to the museum, and she reluctantly agreed. He was able to share his knowledge of art with her, which just made her even more fascinated with him. After that, Alice bought a drink for him because he was a broke idiot. Iska eventually fell asleep and used her luscious melons as a pillow, which made her feel very embarrassed. Later on, the Octet agreed to reinstate Iska as a saint disciple under the condition that he captured the Ice Calamity Witch. The next day, Iska arrived in the office of his unit, where Rissia told him that the Octet wanted to see him. There, he was praised for being able to hold down the Ice Calamity Witch. Then they told him to apprehend Alice in exchange for being reinstated as a saint disciple. When in his room, Iska asked Miss if he could skip training and go to the neutral city the next day. She agreed on the condition that she would follow him like a deranged ex-girlfriend. Iska couldn't refuse her or her wonderful melons. Meanwhile, Rin informed Alice that Iska was a saint disciple who was the youngest to be promoted. She also found out that Iska was imprisoned for breaking out an astral mage from prison. Alice's mother noticed that her daughter was too interested in Iska, but she reminded Alice of how the Empire treated them, similar to the Salem witch trials. After their discussion, Alice told Rin that she wanted to go to the neutral city the next day. As fate would have it, she and Rin met up with Iska and Miss the next day. Mimi's freaked out when she discovered who Alice was. Alice then asked Iska why he was stupid enough to free an astral mage from prison. Iska explained that he did it because the girl was too young and too weak as well. He didn't like the fact that the Empire was apprehending innocent little girls. Iska's stupid actions didn't make sense to Alice. He told her that he wanted to capture a purebred in order to negotiate peace terms between the Nebulous sovereignty and the Empire. Alice made it clear that her mother wasn't going to be bothered by one useless daughter who would be silly enough to get captured. She then asked Iska to defect from the Empire and serve under her. Before he could answer, the sky cracked open and the founder Nebulous appeared. Nebulous attacked them without care for her descendant, who would be caught in the chaos. Alice insulted their founder for ruining her special moment with Iska. Rin got severely injured during the fight while trying to protect Alice. Iska then asked Miss to take Rin to a hospital and also ordered the residents to evacuate the area. Nebulous recognized Iska's swords as those of Crosswale, his former master. The two lovebirds then teamed up to take down Nebulous. They were able to combine their powers and defeat Nebulous, sending the witch back to sleep for a century. After their battle, Iska refused Alice's proposal, but suggested that they come to a temporary truce for the rest of the day. In the city of Jurak, Israk and his companions were losing terribly at a casino. It was their last opportunity to get some free time before Rissia swamped them with a mission. Shin told Miss not to worry about the mission since she would die when the time was right. All Miss really wanted to do was buy the latest tank with the money she would win at the casino. Sadly, the only tanks she would have were the huge ones on her chest. As she went off to gamble some more, Alice and Rin arrived at the casino. Rin tried to get Alice to focus on the slot machines, but she was too busy trying to figure out a date for her and Iska to have their battle. In Rin's view, she looked like she was planning a wedding, which made Alice go completely red at the thought of it. Luckily, Alice won the jackpot and shared her earnings with Nina, who had no idea who she was. Alice left and went into a fortune-telling building to find out when next she would see Iska. The fortune teller told her that he would always be close by and that they were connected by a strong bond. As she left, Iska walked into the same building and was told the same fortune as Alice. Meanwhile, the Octet informed Alice about a vortex around Muda Canyon. They needed more reinforcements and suggested that she should send Iska's unit to the vortex. Risha passed the information to the unit and left them to their miserable fate. On the other hand, Rin informed Alice that the Empire's troops were deployed to the Muda Canyon because of the vortex. She also told her that the Zoa family had been delaying their reports to the Queen. Alice then went to confront the Masked Lord, who failed at a silly attempt to sneak up behind them. Alice questioned him about the vortex, but he called it a drift of underground gas and said there was no proof that it was actually a vortex. Alice realized she was wasting her time with an incompetent weakling, and so she left. At the Mudor Canyon, Miss introduced her teammates to a friend of hers known as Shanna Rotter, a lady who rivaled the size of Miss's melons. After that, the troops met one of the saint disciples known as Nameless, a creepy guy in a high-tech camouflage suit. Nameless told the useless troops not to get in his way of destroying the astral power forces. During the search for the vortex, Iska's unit was informed that one of the units had gone missing, and contact was lost with 2 other units. When they went back to the base, Nameless decided against deploying a rescue squad. Iska then went to speak to Nameless, but the armored creep only remembered the boy as the pathetic traitor of the Empire and told him to get lost. Miss showed up and spoke on Iska's behalf as his captain. After that, Miss got out of the shower and bestowed her teammates' eyes with a view that would leave degenerates like you turned on for a while. Later that night, Alice decided to go to the Mudor Canyon. At the same time, the Masked Lord approached Kissing, the Zoa family's precious child. Alice and Rin arrived at the location of the vortex when the lousy mages tried telling them that the area was off limits. Alice, being an idiotic child, ignored them and went ahead. The Masked Lord then approached her along with Kissing. The Zoa princess clung to the Masked Lord like a helpless child. The Masked Lord revealed that he wanted to go into an all-out war against the Empire, and Kissing would be useful in taking out their troops. Meanwhile, Iska's unit was monitoring the canyon when they noticed astral readings coming from the base. Miss got a call that confirmed their findings, and Jean assumed that the missing units were kidnapped by the astral forces. Neen noticed an astral reading close to them as they noticed a pillar of light not too far off. Shanarotti's unit approached them and revealed that they were astral mages. Miss, who stupidly ran off to greet her friend, was already caught in her grasp and buried in her melons. Miss was knocked out when Nameless showed up and took out the mages. Sadly, Shannarotta got away because Iska blocked the dagger that Nameless threw at her. At the location of the vortex, Shannarotta returned with Miss, who nearly revealed that she knew Alice before Rin knocked her out and stopped the stupid girl from running her mouth like a faucet. Alice then decided to use the opportunity to head to the Imperial Army's base and fight with Iska. Later on, Iska arrived at the vortex's location to save Miss, who was being handled inappropriately by Shanarot. Kissing then showed up and used her powers to stop a missile that was about to hit their base while speaking like a deranged child. As Iska got into a fight with Kissing, Alice faced off with Nameless at the Imperial base. Seeing that Iska was fending off well against her abilities, Kissing released the missile she destroyed earlier at him. At the same time, Alice released her full powers on Nameless and turned the entire base into Antarctica in one attack. The almighty Nameless ran away like a loser, and after that, Alice noticed an explosion that came from the vortex's location. Iska survived the explosion and emerged the winner in his fight against the little brat. The Masked Lord then showed up and attacked Iska, but he was able to slightly dodge and prevent any fatal injuries. He then kicked Miss into the vortex, leaving Iska to jump inside like a suicidal maniac. Alice jumped inside when she got there and started nagging about not being able to find him when she went to the Imperial base. She saved them on the condition that he would fight her when they got back to the ground. They got interrupted when an astral spirit interfered, but they were able to survive. Alice was angry because she wasn't able to get a steamy session with Iska. Meanwhile, Nini and Jean arrived to take back Iska and Miss. The next day, Alice was daydreaming about Iska when Iska approached her and suggested that they go to the neutral city to meet him. Meanwhile, Miss was made to apologize to her squad members for risking her life and endangering them. She suddenly started complaining about a pin in her shoulders, probably due to the stress of carrying those massive jugs around all day. Risia then came in and gave them a mission to infiltrate the Nebulous Sovereignty and capture their queen. Jin told her she was crazy for requesting such a task from them, but Risia wasn't joking around. She told them that there was a way to infiltrate the Sovereignty, but refused to give them the details until their mission day. Back in the neutral city, Alice and Rin had spent 3 days looking for Iska, but he was nowhere to be found. Rin assumed that he could be dead, but Alice refused to believe that Iska would die before he got the opportunity to clap her. Alice decided that they should split up to look for him. Rin was worried that Alice was too fixated on getting clapped by Iska, as opposed to focusing on gaining more supporters and preparing to become the next queen of their nation. She promised to sever whatever fate they had together so Alice could focus on more important matters. At the N07 unit's office, Miss and the rest were trying to figure out what crazy plan Risia planned to use to infiltrate the Nebulous Sovereignty. As Nine went to get medicine for Miss's shoulder pain, the captain took off her clothes and revealed an astral crest on her shoulder. Miss panicked, but Iska calmed the little brat down. Jean assumed that she got the crest when she fell into the vortex and saw the astral spirit. With the crest, this meant that Miss had become a witch. Fortunately, her squad members promised to stick by her side, even if she had become a plague to their nation. Nina and Jin came into Iska's room to discuss how they would protect their captain. Nina said she would stay with Miss for the night so they could touch each other and bump melons. The next day, Iska took Miss to Ain, where she could hide more easily. When Miss went to get drinks for them, Alice finally came across Iska sitting on a bench. She told him that she had spent days looking for him like a crazy ex-girlfriend. Iska tried not to look at her melons too much, as they looked like they could spill out of her dress at any moment. Alice leaned closer to him to give him a better view, which made Iska look like he was about to release his seeds all over his pants. Rin showed up and gave them canned drinks. As Iska took the drink, he fell unconscious. Rin revealed that she spiked his drink with a sleep-inducing drug, but she didn't think that he'd be dumb enough to actually take it. With no other choice, she decided to take him into custody, but Miss arrived at that moment. Miss tried to take Iska back when she unknowingly released her powers, but Alice stopped her by freezing her foot. Risia then reported to Emperor Yun Melngen that Iska had been captured. Alice refused Rin's suggestion to take Iska to the Sovereignty, since he could be tortured or most likely killed. Rin then decided to take Iska to a place close to Nebulous's territory known as Alcatraz. Meanwhile, Risia reported the situation to the Octet. They told her to focus on her secret mission, but the Emperor stalled her from continuing. She told them where Iska was being taken to and highlighted that it was also a prison, where Salinger, a deranged demon who tried to attack the former Queen Nebulous, was being held. Risia suggested trying to bring Salinger to the Empire's side, but it wasn't going to be a simple task. Afterward, she met with Iska's unit and gave them an item that put astral marks on them. With this, they could infiltrate the Sovereignty and save Iska. Jean used the item and pretended to put a mark on where Miss's astral mark was. Later on, Alice and Rin headed to a hotel in Alcatraz. In the car ride, Alice used the opportunity to touch Iska inappropriately since he was unconscious. Rin stopped the car abruptly when she nearly turned an alley cat into roadkill. This made Iska fall on Alice's lemons, a place that degenerates like you would never have the glory of feeling. Iska suddenly woke up sooner than expected. At the border, Jin and his crew were able to pass the security check thanks to their crests. At the hotel, Iska was taken in as Alice's prisoner. Rin told Alice to lock him up in a different room because she felt that Iska was a piece of garbage who would assault Alice at night. Rin volunteered to watch Iska while Alice went to rest in another room. Risia contacted Jin and the rest to find out how their mission was going, as well as guide them through the city. They met up with Risia and headed to Olalugan Prison Tower, where she said Iska was being held. Back at the hotel, Rin planned to kill Iska and frame the story as a self-defense scenario. While Iska was pinned down in a position that would have gotten his sausage standing, Alice walked into the room and confronted Rin. Alice then chained herself to Iska to make sure that he never left her sight. Iska asked how they would use the bathroom or get to bed in chains, and she immediately called him a degenerate for not pointing it out earlier. At that moment, Alice needed a bathroom break, so she exchanged places with Rin, and the entire situation was back where it started in the first place. After her bath, Alice waltzed into the room and blessed Iska with the view of her wonderful jugs. She quickly turned her back, hoping to protect her melons, but instead gave him another view of her cakes. At that point, Iska was the luckiest man in the world. As she turned her back, he noticed her astral crest. She asked him what she thought of her crest, and Iska said he didn't care about her lame tattoo. He only saw her as a rival on the battlefield. On hearing his words, Ariel dropped her towel and said that she liked his answer. Iska, on the other hand, just wanted her to put some clothes on while he could still control his sausage and mind. To get back at him, she tried to strip as well. They might as well have started making babies. Meanwhile, at the prison tower, Jin assumed that there was something fishy going on with their mission. Rizia then approached Salinger, who was chilling in his luxurious prison. Salinger gave Rizia a good view of his awesome body structure, which led me to believe that these astral mages must be really suffering from not getting laid. Rizia said that she'd help him escape in return for his help in a large-scale invasion that involved capturing the current queen, Nebulous. He agreed to help since he was bored of wasting away in prison. Later at night, Alice met with Isak, who couldn't seem to sleep, and told him about Salinger. Rin interrupted their conversation and told Alice that someone had infiltrated their nation. Meanwhile, alarms went off in the prison, thanks to Salinger's prison break. Rizia called Mismis and lied to her about the situation, saying that an earth astral spirit blasted a hole in the walls. She then told them that Iska wasn't in prison, so they had to retreat. Before they could escape, they were surrounded by soldiers. Hearing that there was a commotion in Salinger's cell, Alice decided to go to prison before the demon would obliterate her mother. Before leaving, she gave Alice a new handkerchief after doing unknown things to the old one he gave her. In the prison, Mismis decided to act as bait by posing as an escaped witch. She tried bluffing her way through, but they didn't care about the foolish girl. As she got surrounded, Jean and Nina took out the guards. Mismis buried her face in Nina's chest and started bawling her eyes out after getting saved. Jean told her that she was actually useful for once and not as incompetent as she's always been. Iska got a call from Mismis telling him that they were in the prison. Realizing that Alice left the handcuff keys behind, Iska freed himself and headed straight for the prison. As Alice headed to the prison, her car was attacked and destroyed. She took command of the troops in place of her mother and dished out orders to the troops. On the other hand, Iska finally met up with his two walking milk jugs and the fourth wheel of the group. He took his swords from Mismis and told them to give him 15 minutes, while she rushed into the prison. Rin confronted Salinger, who was disappointed to face the crazy little maid. Salinger felt offended when she referred to his collection of astral spirits as theft. Rin let out a barrage of attacks, but they were as ineffective as her flat chest. Rin was overwhelmed, and as Salinger was about to send her to the pearly gates, Iska saved her. During the battle, Iska made Rin promise that if he defeated Salinger, she would let him and his friends cross the border without hindrance. Meanwhile, in the palace, Schwartz informed Sisbel of what was going on in the prison. He felt it was too much of a coincidence that Alice was there, taking command of the situation. At the prison base, Iska was using all the plot armor in the world to defend against Salinger's invisible attacks. Rin tried to tell Isaki about Salinger's ability to steal astral spirits, but she quickly got tossed out like trash. Isaki dodged another attack and moved in closer to retaliate, but Salinger was protected by a wind barrier. Despite Rin's pitiful state, she tried to help Iska in battle. Salinger decided to show them a glimpse of how powerful a true astral spirit could be. As Alice ordered the police to rescue the injured, she said she was going to deal with the fire, but Nameless popped out of nowhere and confronted her. The assassin taunted her and then ran away with his tail between his legs. Alice then caught sight of Salinger and Iska fighting. Salinger released the combined powers of two astral spirits at Iska. The Saint Disciple tried to slash it away but only ended up disrupting the balance between the two elements. The flames engulfed him, and he was as good as French toast. Salinger spoke of his aim to fuse humans and astral spirits into one being, just like their founder, Nebulous. Rin called him crazy, and pulled out a measly kitchen knife to use as a weapon. She only listened to his pointless rambling to stall him and give Iska time to pop out with a sneak attack. Salinger didn't understand how someone so pathetic could have survived his attacks. Thanks to the abilities of Iska's swords, in which one of them could cut through astral arts and the other could replicate it, he was able to turn himself into a popsicle to escape the flames. Rin used the last of her strength to summon a rock golem to protect Iska. As the angered Salinger prepared to strike her down, Alice showed up and froze his attacks. Iska then went all out against Salinger, making the demon retreat like the pathetic loser he was. The next morning, Rin reported to Alice that all the prisoners had been accounted for and the Imperial soldiers had retreated. Once again, Alice caught herself daydreaming about Iska and snapped herself back to whatever little sense she had left. Back in the Empire, it's revealed that the Nameless who attacked Alice at the prison was actually Rizia, while the real Nameless tested how possible it was to infiltrate the central province of the sovereignty. Later on, Iska and his friends headed home. On their way back, he reminded Miss about her astral crest, and she started whining like a little brat again. At the palace, Alice praised Rin for doing her best during the battle. Midway through the conversation, she started daydreaming about Iska again and putting him through different naughty thoughts in her head. Rin called her back to her little senses, but she also acknowledged the fact that Iska saved a girl like her with insignificant melons. Unknown to them as they were discussing, Sisbel was spying on them. She then realized that Iska was the same Imperial soldier who saved her from prison. Later on, Risha went to meet Emperor Yunmelngen, a weird-looking young boy with animal features who didn't have time to listen to Risha's boring report. He was only interested in the fact that Alice wanted to clap Iska by any means necessary. At the palace, Sisbel woke up from a bad dream where she seemed to have lost her mother. The next day, Queen Nebulus ordered Sisbel to head to Alsamira and investigate if the nation had sided with the Empire. As Sisbel left, Schwartz came and informed the Queen of Elatar's return. Meanwhile, Iska and his friends all had a medical checkup to make sure their rotten brains hadn't gotten any worse. Miss had completely lost it and looked like she was ready for the afterlife thanks to her astral crest. Michaela, a member of the medical coordination team, dragged Rissia into the room by ear because she was letting her team overwork themselves. Because of this, they were forced to take a leave for 60 days. Nene suggested that they go to a faraway resort for their vacation. Despite the perks of being a princess, Alice was suffering the torture of being a 9-to-5 worker at her desk. Rin brought more work for her, but all Alice could think about was Iska. Alice heard the trumpets that welcomed her older sister Elatar as she returned. She went out to meet her and came across Sisbel, who quickly ran away at the sight of her sister. Sisbel left for Almasira and took only Schwartz as her guard. Meanwhile, Elatar, the mother of all milk jugs in her family, went to meet the masked lord. She told him that someone close to them had been involved with the Empire behind the scenes. After some time, Iska and his group arrived at Almasira for their vacation. As they got off the bus, they headed straight for the beach. Miss and Neen showed off their swimsuits to Iska, and the view was enough to get all the sausages on the beach to stand. After a fun-filled day, they headed back to their hotel, with Iska carrying Miss on his back. Jin carried their captain back to the hotel, while Nene and Iska went to get dinner. While Iska waited for Nene to be done with her business, Sisbel bumped into him. They quickly recognized each other, but by the time Nene returned, Sisbel was gone. As her heart beat fast, she ran and met up with Schwartz, who had burned a lot of calories while looking for her. She told him that she had found her dream knight as they headed back to their hotel. After a treacherous work-filled day, Alice was passed out on her couch. Rin showed no pity for the useless girl and told her to get ready for a meet and greet the next day. Then the Queen came to the room and asked Alice to follow her. They went to Sisbel's room to find out what the girl had been up to for a while. While searching through her room, Alice and Rin found out that Sisbel knew about Iska. At the same time, Sisbel tracked Iska like a creep to the hotel where he was staying. Assuming she was an assassin, Iska took her down on the cold floor, but he only succeeded in looking like a desperate loser. She then asked him to come to the Nebula Sovereignty with her. Sisbel introduced herself as the lousy prisoner that he saved a year earlier. She apologized for breaking into his room and asked to change positions since this was her first time being dominated. Meanwhile, Alice assumed that Sisbel found out about Iska after she overheard the conversation between her and Rin. Rin then assumed that Sisbel probably thought that Alice was connected to the Empire, thanks to her urges of wanting to be clapped by Iska. Back at the hotel, Sisbel finally thanked Iska for saving her from prison, and she gave him a bracelet, but he rejected it without a second thought. Pretending like she didn't just get utterly rejected, she told him that she read about him in the newspaper after the prison break. It was because of the Emperor's report that she came to know his name. She promised to restore his honor and status while providing safety if he accompanied her to sovereignty. Iska realized he couldn't be caught between the melons of two sisters and asked her why she wanted him to come. Despite being royalty, she didn't have anyone she trusted in the palace aside from Schwartz. She got really emotional when the question came and excused herself from the room, saying she would come to see him later. As she left, Iska noticed that she had forgotten the bracelet that was offered to him. Meanwhile, at the palace, Rin asked the Queen to allow Alice to go to Alsamira and confront Sisbel alone since she was no longer cooped up like a neat in her room. Queen Nebulus agreed to her request, and she went to make preparations for her master's travel. On the other hand, Sisbel walked back in shame after getting rejected by a loser who held her in her first-time position. In the Empire, the Octet got information that Sisbel had gone to Alsamira with just her butler. With their goal of capturing a purebred, they decided to release a witch-hunting device known as the Object. At this point, it was obvious that the author got tired of coming up with names. Iska and his friends were preparing barbecue for breakfast, while Miss drank her life away. She and Nene asked Iska if it was okay to start grilling the meat, but the pathetic boy was lost in thought about something else. Back at the palace, Elater met with the Masked Lord again and said that her sisters were the ones trying to get in touch with the Empire. The Masked Lord laughed at her as if mocking her information and said that coming to him with that information would be disadvantageous to the Lu family. Elater was more worried about the future of her nation than whichever stupid person was going to be elected. If her sisters were really traitors, she wanted the Masked Lord to be the judge of the situation, since she wouldn't be able to tackle it without favoring her sisters. She then left him to find out the real truth. Alice, who was traveling with cheap transportation, was curious as to why her bus came to an abrupt stop. She went to the road and saw large footprints on the sand and signs of machine oil. Iska and his group were on their way back to a different hotel, but Miss could barely walk anymore, since she obviously had the heaviest luggage out of everyone. Iska picked out where they would stay because he was a cheapskate and wanted to keep their budget as low as possible. Miss's cover-up for her crest was peeling away, and she remembered that she had to get rid of it. Jean told her that there was no hope, so she should enjoy her miserable life while she still could. He then suggested that they get to the general market to look for the same type of sticker that Shanarota used to cover up her own crest. When they got to the hotel, Iska gave Jen his bag and left to look for Sisbel. He couldn't find her, but she suddenly appeared behind him. Then they went somewhere private to talk. Iska figured that she was able to track him, thanks to her astral spirit. She showed him the crest on her chest and said that her astral spirit had the ability to play the events of the past like a video. It was basically a camcorder. Sisbel then narrated how she tracked him and kept tabs on all his movements, making herself look like a deranged stalker. She revealed to him that she was an official successor to the throne and also Alice's sister. According to her, there was a descendant of the founder who was after the Queen's life. She revealed that if the Queen died, there would be an all-out war between the two nations, which would lead to their destruction. With all this information, she was still too incompetent to provide the identity of the supposed assassin, which was why she couldn't trust anyone. She asked Iska to be his protector in a way that made it look like she wanted to sleep with him at that moment. Just like his dream of wanting to bring peace between the two nations, Sisbel wanted the same thing. Later on, Alice finally arrived in Almasira when Schwartz came across her. He told her that he was looking for Sisbel, who had gone off to confess her feelings for her sister's love interest. Back at the secluded area, Iska rejected Sisbel again. He explained that he didn't just want to stop the potential war, but also bring peace between the nations. Sisbel knew that her nation would never forgive the Empire, but Iska still insisted on his dreams. As they discussed, the Masked Lord showed up in their midst. Sisbel tried to explain why she was with Iska, but the Masked Lord already planned to frame her as a traitor. His troops moved to capture her, but she started running away. Being the unreasonable hero he was, Iska got in the way of the mages. Meanwhile, the loser who was running away was confronted by the object. The Masked Lord stopped Iska from trying to save Sisbel, who was about to get banged from different angles. He didn't care about whatever reason she had to be talking to Iska. Jin and the walking milk jugs then showed up to help Iska. Nene noticed that the object detected Mismis's astral energy and marked her to be eliminated. The object slapped away the astral mages that got in its way and proceeded to eliminate Sisbel, who was running like a constipated wretch. The Masked Lord moved to capture her, but got stopped by Jin. Jin and Mismis faced the Masked Lord and his mages, while Iska and Nene went to stop the object. Iska kept the machine busy while Nene tried to hack into its controls. In the midst of battle, Sisbel fell in love with her knight in shining armor, who was risking his life for a waste like her. Nene then released an attack that was able to subdue the machine. On the other side, Jin and Mismis, who wore a skirt that could give the best view of her cakes at any slight movement, ran for their lives. The Masked Lord caught up to them and sliced Jin's hand. Jin shot at him with his secondary gun, but the Masked Lord survived, thanks to the bullet that hit the recording device, which he planned to use to frame Sisbel. With the two of them about to be set ablaze, Mismis released her powers and prevented the mages from being able to use their flame arts. The Masked Lord dropped his guard after seeing her powers, and Jin shot off his mask. Covering his face with his hand, the Masked Lord teleported away. Meanwhile, the object switched to its secondary energy source and charged another attack. Nene noticed that the power source was from the astral light energy as the object fired its laser. They survived the first shot, and she tried to attack before it could fire the second one, but her attacks were as useless as her. Isak told her to regroup with Jin and evacuate the citizens, while he remained behind it to fight the machine with Sisbel. Iska did most of the fighting, while Sisbel remained completely useless to him. She finally got useful by replaying the image of a sandstorm, which gave him the opportunity to strike down on the machine. The object then released an astral spirit that trapped Sisbel within it. Iska was at his wits' end when Alice showed up to provide support. Once again, the two lovebirds teamed up to take down the creature. The astral spirit spoke a weird language as it wreaked havoc across the city. They coordinated their attacks and overwhelmed the spirit, leading to its destruction and saving Sisbel as well. Sisbel woke up and asked about Alice's relationship with Iska, but the Ice Witch denied knowing the poor boy on the spot. Since they refused to accept knowing each other, Sisbel then declared that Iska was her knight in shining armor. Iska then found himself in a love triangle between huge melons and flat-screen TV. Luckily, he was saved by his friends who called him. Somewhere out in the woods, Emperor Yumelngen met up with Salinger to discuss something. At the palace, Queen Nebulis summoned Elatea and questioned if she was really her daughter. Iska and Alice met up again, but still refused to accept their feelings for each other.